Okay, so I mean, hopefully everyone can see the question that we've got sort of lined up for you to be working on with the, there we go, for the breakout session. So just to recap, I mean, what's been happening for the last two sessions is, because this is maybe useful for Anna and Marc to get their head around as well, because we're a group of, over 45 residents, each undertaking their own kind of individual research project in their own place over the course of the 10 weeks. This is really the only way or the only opportunity where all of us can come together and kind of meet each other. So in the first session, we did a series of breakout rooms where it was very rapid. There was kind of like maybe 5 different groups of 5 minutes each, and it was a bit sort of like an art chat roulette. And the way that we're developing that is to kind of, I think each sort of week, maybe still having the same amount of time and space for people to come together and talk, but perhaps in slightly smaller groups and with a less kind of didactic kind of or structured question. So as things go along, maybe, we can start to pull out some stuff from previous discussions as well, and it will sort of build organically. But for today, I just wanted to kind of offer up this question for you to discuss in your groups. So I think we've got about 4 groups of, maybe there'll be about sort of 5 people per group, up to 10. And you'll have half an hour to sort of ponder or collectively discuss this question. How would you like to collaborate in the future or in the post-pandemic future? So again, I think, the idea of these is to offer a question that can be open to interpretation and sort of is very much about you and your experience and your personal take on it as well. So don't forget the you bit. So yeah, how would you like to collaborate in the post-pandemic future? I can put that into the chat for everyone as well, just in case it's useful to go to whilst you're in the groups. And then what we'll do is have half an hour for you to sort of talk through that. And then if you can sort of nominate a representative from your group that would sort of feedback, I'll sort of go through the different groups after the breakouts, and we can sort of pull in the larger discussion that we've had, but through sort of one representative per group, if that's possible. So let me just check the breakout room. So yeah, you've got half an hour to discuss that amongst yourselves, and then I'll pull you back in and sort of begin to go through one by one to feedback anything that you've spoken about, and then we'll have sort of 10 minutes at the end where I just want to recap on some of the more basic stuff about the residency. So enjoy your talk. How would you like to collaborate in the post-pandemic future? Hope everyone enjoyed that. I think that's been the least rushed group discussion we've had so far, because I think last week we were up against the time a little bit due to our strange rooms. So I hope everyone had a useful discussion together. And as I said, with these kind of the group chat bit, it would be really nice if these end up sort of being the kind of base for people doing their own group discussions at some point. So we're just sort of feeding in some ideas at the moment, but very happy for you to be taking these in their own direction. But it'd be brilliant to have a bit of feedback from the groups, just to kind of get an idea of what was covered or anything that sort of like stood out for you. So I think I can see pretty much everyone that's on the call. Who'd like to begin? You can either raise your hand or let me know via the digital bit or in real life. Okay, well, I'm going to prioritize Rachel, who's in the same room as me. So it makes it a bit easier. So I'm going to mute myself, and then Rachel, you'll need to unmute you, and then hopefully everything will be just great. So yeah, what did you end up talking about in your group?
Hi. So yes, I don't actually know where to look here. So okay, lots of really interesting things coming out of that chat. So the role of how I was thinking about, to begin with, the role of between disciplines. So there was the role of collaborating between accountants, science, education, with people outside of the kind of art world, if you like. And that was particularly prominent in Anna and Marc's kind of presentation in terms of the relationship between upskilling and kind of shared labour, actually, within thinking about building these cooperatives that can take, you know, a minimum of 10 years, and some even aren't complete. So there was also thinking through a methodology that there was a description around contamination that in some ways within collaborative practice, this value in collaborating but not necessarily knowing where you're going within that process, but in the kind of value in kind of spending time together. Yeah, quite a lot of questions around the role of digital in collaboration, because obviously that's very much a necessity at the moment. Mm-hmm. But also the kind of real sense of limitations at times within that, whether that's through kind of, there's a description here of a fragile connection. And I thought that was really interesting because that's a digital thing, but it's also about kind of human relationships, or the accessibility issue just being digital is just non-existent for some people. And this kind of note towards collaboration in terms of materials. So what was described as kind of old style communication or old style materials, the role of postcards, of pedagogical suitcases that were sent out, of the use of the radio, of kind of public service announcements. That was also really interesting as a kind of a form of collaboration. And I suppose just a final note on the duration, and it was actually reflecting on this session's breakout being longer, and the kind of benefit of that, and thinking about the issues of kind of time and duration within collaboration post-pandemic.
Okay, that was great, Rachel. Really nicely surmised and sounded like an excellent conversation. So I've just made some notes there, so I will reflect back my notes on your notes. You can tell me if I got it right. So you've got some stuff, about collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration between sort of things that are outside of art disciplines, including science and education, and the role of upskilling in that, which I think is very interesting, about the training and the kind of like autodidact that you might need to be in this kind of new post-pandemic world to train yourself, and the kind of, some stuff around time and duration, the sort of scale of these projects, and how I guess they always seem to benefit from a longer time scale when it's possible, which I mean is a luxury we can discuss about whether that's likely to continue in the post-pandemic future as well. This idea around contamination sounded very interesting. So in the sense that it can be a sort of almost like a disruptive sort of process to collaborate, because it sort of maybe throws you off course, or kind of doesn't, is that, got the right sort of understanding of that? Say it again, Rachel. About not having a shared language. Yes, yes. Very good. So you're going to see sort of Rachel like mute. being a mime to me. And I mean, again, this sort of thing around fragility, which is something that came up before, which is sort of like an interesting language that we're sort of collectively developing, I think, around fracturedness and fragility. And it's kind of, I think, the kind of, you know, there's a sort of emotional aspect to the language that we use as well. Okay, so that's really interesting. Can we move on to the next group that would like to feedback? Again, just like another 5 minutes would be great. Stefano, I think you'd put your hand up previously, is that right? To feedback for your group. Can we move on to you then?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I have some notes from discussion, but maybe I will forget something. So please, the people who were with me, feel free to intervene and to add what you think it's important. We had to face a bit difficult with the fact that the question was very wide. So we started breaking it down, and the first part that we wanted to go deeper was what post-pandemic future means, because actually it could mean very different things. It could mean after all this pandemic crisis is done, or in a condition which it's mixed between, you know, getting better and the crisis not be done. And also Tiso pointed out that in different parts of the world this scenario could be very different actually. So there is no one post-pandemic future. And then came the huge word, which is collaboration, and we started breaking it down also. We started with the fact that no collaboration is actually impossible. Tatiana brought her experience with Catalin, and as this relationship curator and artist, and with the fact that actually cooperating is not a choice, it's absolutely important for them to work. So this is not a new thing, but rather we could investigate how this could change in a post-pandemic future. And then we discussed a lot about this condition and this polarization between digital and physical collaboration. And we discussed also about the difficulty of having a proper discussion with the instrument of the breakout room, as we found a bit difficult to break the ice, to, you know, to find maybe the intimacy which is needed to develop this kind of discussion. And Annabelle brought her experience with a LARP session she had, and told us about how it was quite odd trying to do this kind of experience, which requires a great awareness of being your body and embodying also another role maybe, and how it was strange to develop it on a digital level, dimension only. And I think that's quite some things we discussed about. I don't know if Ginevra or Annabelle or Tiso want to add some more, but this is the notes I took. I think I hope to have been quite
great. Okay, so if I'm doing a little bit, you know, reflecting back again. So, you know, what do we mean by post-pandemic future? I mean, obviously that's, you know, open, but I think in terms of this residency, I've tried to sort of explain from the beginning that we're talking about not a future where the virus has disappeared, but something where we're living with its effects, rather than, you know, let's wait for things to go back to normal. But I still think it's obviously worth bringing up each time we mention it, because it's a language that can be a bit confusing. Also, I think this thing around sort of many futures is a really good point as well. So something, yeah, let's kind of keep that in mind. It's obviously different in different places, even from, you know, borough to borough, as someone from Bradford is finding out in the UK. So also we talk about your digital and physical collaboration, differences in that, something around intimacy, which I think is a very good word to bring in now, and highlight the potential lack of intimacy that might be necessary for a good collaboration through only digital tools. Again, another thing about, I suppose, you know, the types of spaces we're inhabiting when they're sort of digital and time limited is interesting. Something about scale, was that right, Stefano? Something about, you mentioned something about a larger session that had happened, or someone had had an experience of a larger session, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
But again, something about scale which we can, you know, sort of think of, because I mean, today's also, interestingly, we've got probably about, you know, 10 less participants than usual, or at least some of them are sort of joined together as twins, sort of like on the same screen. And then another thing about embodiment, which is another, you know, great that's coming up as a repeated word. And I guess thinking about embodying a collaboration is also something to think about. Okay, so let's have another, we've got 2 more groups of feedback. Zena, can you chip in? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi. So I haven't taken any notes. So I need some help from my group members. We all agree with the previous group about the difficulty of such discussion, and especially with this question, because it's very difficult. We felt that it needed like hours, maybe weeks, to think about, to reflect. But we started, like, I think our group discussed like how exactly are we going to collaborate, like the methods that we will collaborate through. We thought about the connection, the digital method through Zoom, what we like about it, what we don't like about it, how we think what will work and what will not work. We all agreed that about the value of like the physical communication, the human physical communication, and how we think that might be possible in a post-pandemic future. There was an idea of the rediscovering of the outdoor spaces as a way to overcome this digital communication, like nature, or even like public spaces in the cities that were rediscovered in many different places. We thought about like the idea of collaboration, like how did we collaborate before the pandemic? Like maybe we need to think about the previous ways of collaborating, and then reflect them about the present and then the future. There was discussion also about the funding of such collaborations, or the funding of culture and arts in different places. What else? Anybody remembers anything else?
There was one interesting point about what happens with the identity of people after for a long time being deprived from a group that they belong to. So could out of that come a different kind of collaboration, that you connect in a different way?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that sounds fantastic to me, like a really good conversation. Thanks very much, Zena. So again, just like to quickly go back on that. So kind of like you talking about the value of physical communication. And I quite like this idea of like, yeah, trying to remember back to the pre-pandemic kind of like history, and you know, how did we used to talk to each other, and what was there. It's a good point. I think this kind of stuff around, yeah, how people are getting around that through that, trying to find alternatives to purely digital communication through maybe using outdoor space in a different way in nature and thinking differently about actual physical public space is super interesting as well. And so Anna's last sort of thing there, what happens to identity when collaboration has changed? Is that right? Okay, like a kind of like an individual or collective identity might sort of, there might be some long-term effects from the way that we're having to collaborate at the moment. Excellent. Okay, well, there are things for me to sort of keep some notes on as well. And so who's the representative of the final group?
I think
who's feeding back from them?
Yeah.
Is it Irena? Okay, I'll mute myself.
We wonder a lot about what post-pandemic future means and what it is post-pandemic future. I mean, it's gonna be like a point, and from that point we have pandemic past and post-pandemic future. So we wonder a lot about how we can define post-pandemic future, and probably not all of us will be in a post-pandemic future at the same time. So it's probably something that's gonna happen gradually somehow, and maybe some of us are already in a post-pandemic future, because I mean, it depends on the point of view you see this pandemic. It's not the same in the same chronological view for everyone, actually. Then we wonder a little bit about how we can collaborate to be more collaborative, but in a different way than before. Probably before it was more individualism. Now find a way of being more collaborative, but we wonder a lot how we can be collaborative and be political at the same time if we can act just in a small territory, in a small local group, in small community. So we talk about how to change our idea of being political, because probably being in a small group, it's not a way of being less political, but it's a way of add more voices, because if you're in a huge group, probably you can hear less voices speaking. But if you're in a small group, you can hear more people speaking. So maybe in a different way of being political in the future, we have to, probably we have to change our thinking of being political and find a way of acting in a local way, but having a voice kind of global. So I don't know if I forgot something. It was quite a lot. Elena, Laia, it's okay. Okay, so more or less these were
okay. That sounds fantastic. Is it Irena or Irina?
Irene, sì. Irene.
Irene. Okay, grazie. Yeah, that was super good. So again, another sort of question around, do we need to sort of dig a bit deeper into this idea of what we mean by post-pandemic future? Because even if we're talking about something where it's about just living with the effects of the pandemic, again, to recognize that it's been different in different places, and this kind of idea or concept of the fact that, people are experiencing it also in different times, like the phases of it are different, and therefore maybe we're having something where chronologically we're kind of we've got different perspectives that are clashing at the moment. So are we all in October 2020? I think it's sort of is a sort of interesting question to go back, especially when we're thinking about sort of Marc and Anna's practice around futures and time travel and the slightly science fiction element to it as well, which I like. And then, I mean, the other thing there, I hope I'm not reducing it down too much, is just this sort of idea about scale and the idea of, kind of being forced to act more locally, but if we want to retain a kind of political power, that maybe has to be done with a global voice or a global perspective as well. Sounds brilliant. Okay, well, I mean, I think from the sounds of it, that was a really useful sort of discussion for everyone to be having, and thanks for feeding back on it. I mean, all of these things are, hopefully, obviously, I'm aware that they're kind of like happening in quite a restricted space and amount of time, but the luxury of time is, not something that we have. And actually, I think Anna and Marc's kind of sort of, yeah, wake up call to thinking about the environmental sort of context that we're in, and climate change is also, it's sometimes useful to realize that we maybe don't have all the time in the world. So it's how do we make use of the time that we have? Having said that, we've got 6 minutes left. So I wanted to kind of just quickly just do a little reminder for people. Sorry, this is, I'm going to have to do a share screen here, aren't I? Just before we kind of finish up for today, just have a quick sort of refresher just on the general methodology that we're at, because we're obviously sort of getting into 4 weeks on into the residency now. And I didn't want to lead this, you know, I wanted you to have a genuine kind of conversation about collaboration, but obviously one of the things that we're trying to do through the residency is kind of provide some sort of collaborative experience for the entire cohort, even though only a few of you are here at a time, and sort of do this local, very super local investigation that you can do in a world with travel restrictions and even social distancing, but then that can have a kind of hopefully be greater than the sum of its parts by bringing it all together. So, I mean, yeah, just as a reminder, you know, you're all, I guess now 3 weeks into your action research projects that you're undertaking in your locale. We've had 3 groups arrive here and sort of share the various stages of that here through their 1 week intensive in Biella. And we're using that sort of Padlet space to update everyone on kind of what we're doing and kind of how it's going. And I think this is very nice just to sort of get a sense of where everyone else is coming from. And then, you know, it appeals to the sort of voyeur in me to kind of be seeing what, you know, all these different approaches are. And I think we're getting some kind of, you know, reflections both on, well, from the groups that have been here on what's happened. So, you know, we've been doing sort of trips and visits that are getting talked about by the residents that have been in place in Biella, but equally people that are, you know, that are yet to sort of visit are sharing their research, but also just even sort of information about the place that they're in. I think it's all sort of like really useful stuff for us to be finding out about. And I suppose there's 2 reasons to be doing that. First, you know, when you're here, we're kind of like hoping to sort of give you some input in terms of how you can sort of continue to work on this investigation, this question that you're doing, both in the 10 weeks of the kind of residency, but, you know, hopefully I think what people will have come out with by the end of this whole process is probably a longer term project. You know, we're learning all together that, of course, these, you know, these things can sort of be 10, 20-year projects, but they have to start somewhere. And the question often can come from something that happens in a fairly short time scale. And then, of course, you know, how to use your time well here whilst you're in Biella, because I think, you know, we can get some feedback from the residents at some point, but whilst you're here, it's a 1 week intensive, and even for those people that are having to do that at a distance, you know, hopefully you've got the week available to really sort of start to think about what the methods are and what the sort of techniques and the question you're looking at is. So in terms, I mean, the other reason for this, you know, use of the Padlet is not just for being nosy, but for being able to start to make connections between different residents and how, yeah, this kind of collective investigation might start to be joined up and the collaborations that could take part. We're definitely not expecting, even for the groups that are here for the week, for you to kind of be forced into a group method of working, or for people to be doing one project. But through kind of knowing what everyone's up to, we can start to find resonances and opportunities for people to kind of help each other out. And I do think we're at a stage now with residency where it'd be great to see some kind of self-organized groups coming out of that, and kind of people starting to realize a bit more about each other's projects that could sort of take on a life of its own that isn't necessarily mediated by me or Juan, or and obviously it can, you know, we'll feed into this on the Saturdays, but I think there's the opportunity now for people to start to make those connections themselves, and maybe we could help a little bit with that. In terms of the actual sort of expectations around collaboration or how things are working here. This is an exercise that we did with the first group, which I'm sure some of you are sort of familiar with. Exquisite Corpse, beloved of the surrealists, but a kind of game that, I mean, in collectives that I've been part of, we used to play quite a lot. So, I mean, I'm assuming people know this game, but you kind of, you each draw a different part of a body, but you only work from the last lines that the person left previously. And this was done by Federico and Francesca and Alice in the first week, as well as the kind of wordplay version. So this kind of idea of a collaboration that could happen between the group, which isn't necessarily, one shared vision of an entire project, but leaving kind of points of departure for each other, or kind of starting points or questions that the next group might sort of arrive at, I think would be a really nice way to think about something that could happen both through the Padlet space, the digital space, and what happens whilst you're in Biella as well. So I just thought it might be useful to have a little sort of refresh on that. So next week we have the presentation from Sandy Halal, and it's going to be facilitated by Aria Spinelli because I'm off next week. It's my birthday. And I'm going to be going back to the UK, and so I'll catch up with it, but maybe not on that day. If anyone's got any sort of questions, I'll be sending the recording out of this again hopefully by tomorrow. I'm starting to be able to turn it around quickly enough, and we'll talk with Anna and Marc and see if there's any opportunities for them to either do sort of a quick one-to-one session or sort of dropping on our crits, if there's any sort of follow-ups that people have there. Unless there's any other sort of burning questions that I can answer now for someone.
We have a question from Sarah on the top.
Yeah?
Yes, how can we connect?
Yeah, okay, so how can you connect? Yes, I mean, I suppose the Padlet space is there for you to kind of leave the information about yourself that you'd like to leave. So if that includes a kind of a contact for someone to get in touch with you, then I would do it that way. I think that's kind of more polite than us kind of sharing everyone's details if not everyone's opted in. So yeah, hopefully that's something that will develop over the next couple of weeks. So I just want to say, yeah, a big thank you again to Anna and Marc. I mean, I thought it was a fantastic sort of presentation, really good of them to come in and sort of offer their time to us. So yes, another sort of digital round of applause. And it's been really great to see you all again. I'm enjoying kind of like getting to know people a little bit better. And obviously there's been the groups that have been here and kind of people that I'm still only seeing as little boxes on my screen. But thanks again for joining us. Big thanks to Eric and also to Clara as well, sort of behind the scenes, making sure that everything's gone smoothly. And I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your weekend.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ciao.